Hi everyone. Before we go into our discussion, we have about 50 minutes. I just want to state, I guess, the obvious really, which is just to say thank you so much, Holly, for making such a powerful and important film. And thank you, Geraldine, for being part of that and for all the work that you've done for so long. Just needed to be said. So we're going to start by just going around our panel briefly for them to introduce themselves and just say whatever they want to say about the film. It'll be different from someone who's made it and been in it from someone who hasn't, but whatever people want to say just to kick us off. And then we'll do some discussion based on questions from yourselves, and we'll take it from there. So it feels right to me if we ask Geraldine to go first and then come to Holly, and then we'll go on to Dr. Alison Fixsen and Dr. Valsa Madhava. So over to you, Geraldine.
Okay, well, we all know who I am then, I guess. And so, I mean, I've been off of the drugs for many, many years now, but as much as I've gone on with my life, we all do go on with our lives. But I did have a podcast. I still have it. I just have to get back to it one of these days, called Benzodiazepine Awareness with Geraldine Burns, where I try to give some of the most hopeful stories for people to hear, because the documentary was so important. And then afterwards, you still want to hear success stories. So I felt, I started that back, I think in 2018, right before I found out my husband was sick. So we don't make a lot of videos. So that's basically my life. I mean, I'm a grandmother now. I went from being a 33-year-old when I got put on Ativan to I'll be 70 in a couple of weeks, and I now have 2 grandchildren. So life goes on.
Thanks, Geraldine. Holly.
Well, I haven't seen the film in a while. I'm so busy with outreach that I can lose sight sometimes of everybody's stories, getting to know these people so well. And it's still wretched to see what was happening to people then and is still happening now. So I do remain committed to different aspects of outreach and change. And we need more support in that direction, more people. The numbers need to grow, because we are finding, when we can show the film, when we can have conversations with people and bringing in evidence, people are ready. Even policymakers are ready to accept the need for change.
Also, would you like to introduce yourself and say what you thought about the film? You're on mute, Valsa. There you go.
So my name is Valsa Madhava. I am a medical doctor. I am licensed in the US. So I'm a board certified internist, an addiction medicine doctor, and a functional medicine practitioner. I have a benzo tapering practice in New York, where I use a functional medicine model to taper. This model includes addressing root causes of the difficulties patients have in tapering, such as nutrient imbalances, hormones, and I also look at gut microbiome dysfunctions. So I do testing as indicated. I use a combination of medications, lifestyle changes, and nutrient supplements to support the individual as they're tapering. So I found this film to be deeply moving and, of course, heartbreaking to see so many people losing their lives and also families being shattered, right? And also it's difficult to see how the medical profession is just so stubborn in its ways, not wanting to change, even though there is so much overwhelming evidence that patients are really suffering. It all has to do with the way we practice medicine in the US, where it's standard of care, and which is often determined by medical, the medical policymakers who are influenced by pharma. So it's just very, very, very difficult. And the guidelines, even having like benzodiazepine tapering within the addictions arena, is very disturbing because it's not an addiction. But anyway, I'll stop there.
Thank you. I'll just say quickly, I also found that the sight of those psychiatrists denying that there were any problems after 50 years of knowing that, absolutely just disgraceful. It just made me so angry. Alison, over to you.
So thank you. Yeah, I'm Dr. Alison Fixsen. I'm a senior lecturer in psychology at the University of Westminster. I'm kind of here in two guises. So I'm an academic and I've written papers and done research into benzodiazepines and benzodiazepine withdrawal, mostly looking at people's lived experiences. But I'm also a survivor of benzodiazepines and benzodiazepine withdrawal. And I don't say that lightly. I kind of found the film itself extremely moving. And actually, I had to kind of, the first time I looked at it, I had to look away at times because it was all a bit traumatic and all a bit memorable. Sort of seeing Matt Semmett, I came across his book when I was kind of reaching out and to find people that had similar experiences. What I would say, though, as a person who lives in the UK, I'll actually put a link to my papers, if you don't mind, if people want to look at my kind of what I said about things. But what I would say is that someone in the UK is a different landscape in the UK to some extent. On the face of it, the legislation is tighter. But my experiences, certainly when sort of 10 and 15 years ago, when I was first put on them, was that the knowledge was still incredibly limited. And I was way into my withdrawal before I actually met a doctor who said, yeah, I know what you're going through. I've seen patients like this before. There was absolutely no understanding about what tapering means and what it was all made up in my head to some extent, and it was just I had some kind of anxiety, some terrible anxiety attack through a virus or something like that. Nobody understood what was really going on at the time. So I would just like to say thank you for everybody who's here, really, and as I say, I'm happy to answer any questions about my work in this area.
Thank you all. I'll start with a few questions in the Q&A, and I have a couple myself, which we'll come on to. Alison, you were just talking about things being slightly different in the UK. And I think things are different around the world. So that's a question I have from the Q&A here from Andy, who works in Wales for a specific team in North Wales, helping people reduce prescribed medications, which people in the UK will know of this team, and will also know that they are the only team left now, because we had one other service in Bristol that was recently closed down. So to that extent, we're going backwards. Anyway, he would like to know, is the situation improving in the US due to it being on the agenda like this? We can come back to the UK, Alison, but let's Geraldine and Valsa or Holly, or particularly Geraldine and Valsa, do you think things are getting any better overall? Are there services developing, as well as all the online support that people are giving one another?
But I'll answer first. I'm going to say, there's still more and more support groups online. But one of the things I think we're seeing now as awareness is coming about benzos, I think it's one of the worst things that's happening. Our doctors are cutting people off cold turkey, which we were trying to, in our legislation here in Massachusetts, to make sure that doesn't happen. So in that sense, I see that as a huge problem. There's still a lot of denial that the drugs are a problem, sadly. And yet there's organizations, the documentaries, books, more books are being written. So I'm going to let Holly and Valsa also answer, but no, I just see more and more people joining these support groups. So are they just learning? But these cold turkey people coming in, I think it's a disgrace.
Yeah, there's so many things wrong with how we deal with the benzodiazepines, right? So the addiction model in the US is such that if someone is identified as having a benzodiazepine issue, it's automatically, that individual is still automatically sent into the inpatient setting where they're tapered off within 5 to 7 days. That model has to change. And once they come out of the hospital, it's the detox, addiction detox model, then that's when probably some of the problems comes about, because they may not find a psychiatrist or someone else or another practitioner to renew the medications because they've now completed detox. If they're asking for medication, then that means that they have an addiction issue. So I concur with what Geraldine said. I think there is still a problem of abrupt withdrawals, and that for me, abrupt is even 5 days, 7 days, 10 days. I consider that an abrupt withdrawal. It doesn't have to be one day to the next. It can be even a week, even longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, a week is ridiculous. Anyway, Holly.
Yes, change tends to happen in small steps. And one bright note I can share is that, and some people who have been following the film and our outreach would already have known this, but one of the psychiatrists in the film, Dr. Olivera Bogunovich, who knows that earlier working at McLean Hospital, she just thought she knew that benzos could be difficult, but there was still the buts. And since the film came out, she is now working with us. She more often than not will just state plainly, benzodiazepines are dangerous, because she has seen in her own practice and hearing from lived experience people, that this it's not an addiction model, as Valsa says. It's just, and I think we're all grateful that research has been done to create this benzodiazepine-induced neurological dysfunction nomenclature, BIND. I mean, there have been some excellent steps forward, and there are a million more miles to go.
Alison, I cut you off earlier.
Did you cut me off?
Well,
Sorry.
you started to say something. No? Okay.
No, I'll let any other questions come forward first. Thank you.
Well, I was just saying, when we talk about progress, I'm just astonished, because we're just getting started really on antidepressants and knowledge about that. But we have known about the benzos for 50 years. And it's not an area I know as much about as I do about antidepressants and antipsychotics. I'm just shocked that they're having to even establish that it's a problem.
Well, it's incredible. I
Yes.
met with Professor Malcolm Lader. I don't know if you know of his work. He started doing his research, I think, in the 70s. So he very quickly realized, or maybe it was the 80s, but he very quickly realized that his patients were getting worse. He kind of saw that, and he did extensive work. I mean, he was never totally anti-benzodiazepines. He kept his medical hat on, but he really understood that that withdrawal needed to be taken seriously. And I think it was him that said this, the quote that says it's harder to come off benzodiazepines than heroin. And actually, David Cameron, for all his faults, he actually did quote that in Parliament. So there's been movements, but somehow there is some denial that seems to be going on about them, and it would be interesting to know what that is, whether it's just because the people who are often prescribed it are a vulnerable group, in the sense that they are coming saying, help me, I need something. Not always, but quite often they are. And there isn't a lot of other things that are that give very, very quick relief. But then, of course, it so quickly gets out of hand. And I think there are doctors that just don't, obviously we saw in the film, who just say, oh no, everything's just very mild, and I have never seen any patients that have had any problems. It's extraordinary that they can say that.
It should be enough to be struck off, in my opinion. That's an astonishing level of either ignorance or just barefaced lying, in either way.
Absolutely, yes.
On a positive note, in Britain, again largely around antidepressants, but there's also a focus on benzos and antipsychotics. There's a new all-party parliamentary group which we have just helped form, called Beyond Pills, which is about as direct a title as you can get, and we're hoping that that body will push through the recommendations of the Public Health England report of a few years ago, which was very clearly calling for support services for people coming off antidepressants and benzos, etc., and for 24-hour helplines and that. So we're hopeful that we are going to get there in that sense.
I
Sorry,
would like to point something out about the UK, if I may,
please.
because
Please.
I know as the filmmaker over and over again, contacting people in the UK, I've been told, yes, well, it is well known, the NIH doesn't even allow benzodiazepines to be prescribed under special circumstances, but I have been collecting marketing information for a number of years. And the sources are, because this is what investors use to decide whether or not they're going to invest in pharmaceuticals. And the numbers they continue to grow. And for example, in 2018 in the UK, over $51 million in sales, up in 2021, the pandemic, over 63 million, but it continues to rise. 2023, over 73 million, 2024, 77 million, projected for 2025, 82 million, over 82. I mean, so something's going on in the UK that even, I think, even campaigners aren't aware of, because I know when I was first told, well, the NIH doesn't even want to cover these anymore. When I saw these numbers, it's something else is going on. And these are the legal sales. These aren't the illegal marketers coming in. This is all supposedly above board, but it just shows how powerful the big pharma marketing system remains.
Yeah, so sorry, can I just quickly respond to that?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's a really good point, actually. And I was just looking at a paper that was saying that there's there's 45% of the benzodiazepine prescribing is in the lowest socioeconomic areas, with the in the UK. So again, we have this kind of social justice, this people being sort of taken advantage, and they're often older populations as well. So they're the people who are least likely to be asking questions or questioning their doctor. So I think there are real problems in the UK. It's not just, there might be different problems, but there are real problems that need addressing.
Indeed, and the latest figures I've seen is we've got 1.4 million people were prescribed.
Yes,
that's in a country with a population of 50 million approximately. So that's one in 40 people, which is a lot of people. And the other demographic, of course, which I'm sure we'll come on to at some point, is that women are prescribed these drugs almost twice as often as men. And I don't think that's for biological reasons. I think
no.
a bunch of social factors in there, but I'm supposed to be chairing, not talking, sorry. Two or three questions here, mostly to you, Holly, I guess, about how can we make this wonderful film more available, and what's happening with the film?
It's widely available, not necessarily internationally, but it's certainly widely available in the US, Canada, Australia. In the UK, it is on Amazon. It was on a YouTube channel that was, the way they were presenting it was almost unwatchable. So that I hope is not there anymore. And yes, so basically on Amazon in the UK, and Apple and other places, like US and Canada, Apple, Tubi, Google Play. And YouTube is picking up too. There's a good YouTube. Their own platform is a pretty good platform too. And I think it's technically free. I'm trying to find, I have some other information about the UK. I think more people are being prescribed than what the information you had about the 1.4 million. I would really want to try to find that. I have it somewhere because it's higher, but does it really matter when people being harmed? I said to myself when I first started this project, well, because somebody said, well, it's only 10%. I said, are you kidding? 10%? If one person in 10, if one person in 100 is dealing with this, it's too much. And so, I maintain that point of view because I'm a survivor too. And it's the worst experience in life I think anybody can have physiologically.
Yeah.
And of course that affects neurological and it's just everything. It's just, it takes your life away.
Holly, I had a question. Years ago, Professor Ashton had said that she saw the most multi-drugging coming out of the United States and Canada, because, when people were writing to her and whatnot, I mean, as we see on the group, so many are multi-drug like Scotty. Do you see that? Is that in other countries or Canada? Do we still see Canada and the US are still the worst with the multi-drugging? It all usually starts with benzos. Have you seen any research on that?
I don't have hard science on that, but I could say we know that polypharmacy is an outgrowth of benzodiazepine tolerance and doctors not understanding. And then of course it happens with antidepressants too. I hear from people who are having terrible issues with antidepressants. And even if they think they might want to stop, a benzodiazepine is thrown in to help them stop. And the reverse happens. Because I had that when I was tapering clonazepam, I was told to take Lexapro. Thank God I didn't. And that's where when we go to these support groups, these online support groups, they can be so helpful because it was somebody on Benzo Buddies. I asked a question about, should I really do this? And they gave me excellent information. So I knew it was too risky and I never did.
Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, the information that has come out since then about antidepressants too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite recent, isn't it? Well, having mentioned the support groups, Lucy, I'm wondering if you could put 2 or 3 of them in the chat, like for instance, in a compass. Laura, it's good to see Laura Delano in the film.
Yeah.
So that because we can't in this situation answer any individual sort of situations or give medical advice, but we can put up some of the support groups that are out there for people. So I'm wondering if you could do that, Lucy, while we're talking. Surviving antidepressants, for instance, and the other benzo ones that we know. We were talking earlier, just before we showed the film, we started to talk amongst ourselves about whether the pros and cons of getting healthy in a more general sense before you start the withdrawal process. And I'm wondering if this might not be a good time to pick that discussion up now.
So I had that question earlier because when I was still oblivious that the drugs were making me sick, I was only on the drugs a few years at that point. I couldn't work. And I actually went to like a holistic nutritionist and he changed my diet, gave me some supplements, and I started to feel better. And I was on Ativan and Elavil at the time, got off the Elavil, no problem. And I started taking myself off Ativan. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just off and I'm almost all the way off. I lost the drug weight. I go back to work part-time. I'm doing wonderful when the doctor I'm seeing sees how good I'm doing. And instead of encouraging me, basically is saying diet, nutrition have nothing to do with your health. You need to take Ativan for the rest of your life. And this was just in a 7-month period. I'm eating healthy. I mean, in a way that I had never eaten. She took all sugar out of my diet, changed everything. And I sold my soul for sugar and back up on the Ativan I went. She was constantly trying to give me other drugs. And thank God I reacted to all of them. And then years go by and I'm still on it. And when I go to come off the next time, I am so physically ill because I had lost my uterus at that point, because we know when we've had the hearings, most women on these long-term, they all have either lost their periods, bleeding a lot, having hysterectomy or multiple DNC. So I was one of the ones that had hysterectomy. And it was 6 months after my hysterectomy that I meet a doctor that finally tells me that it's Ativan and gives me a thing to come off in 2 weeks. So I don't come off the right way. I came off in 4 months, which after almost 10 years was way too fast. I wish I had gone back to that or even gone back on that diet and ate healthy first. I don't think I would have. I suffered a long, long time until I then did functional medicine, years off to get healthy. So that's my opinion. And I've seen it over the years. Those who get healthy first and taper do not suffer like some that go with their sick body or ripped off or taper slowly. So I'll let Valsa or whoever else wants to get in on that conversation.
Oh, I'm happy to talk about diet.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's essential. I think it's essential for human health anyway, based on the more and more information we're getting about not just the American diet, but diet in the UK, diet everywhere. Almost every country is inundated now with ultra-processed foods. And I think we're learning a lot from the research being done there to apply it to what we need to do to heal from the damage that the benzodiazepines create, which is one of the the most disturbing issues that I think most benzo harm people have are terrible gastrointestinal issues. And then,
Yeah.
So you do a little research and you start to realize like, oh, the gut-brain connection. Because I think you and I, but at different times, were part of a subset of people interested in sort of medical research as lay people, finding out that whole gut-brain connection and applying it to our own lives. But that's essential for healing from benzodiazepines.
Yeah. I mean, my gut was a mess. Yeah. I was 97 pounds at one point. I was a skeleton with skin. So, I mean, and it wasn't until I did functional medicine and knew how bad my gut was that I could even start gaining weight. And I was actually eating healthy at that point, fully healthy, organic, 3 years, couldn't put on a pound until I started to heal the gut. And I understood about the liver, the genetics. And there you go. After all those years of suffering did not have to happen in my case. So.
And there are certain diets that help. Like a lot of people are helped by the ketogenic diet. I was helped by paleo. I mean, they're all kind of related, but there are certain principles. No processed sugar.
Yeah.
Most people, no dairy. Many people, no grains. And what's what I'm leaving out? Oh, I'm leaving out something major from the sort of the no more, like I can't, there's so many sort of food categories I can't handle. And I've healed so well, but I will always have vulnerabilities, I'm sure.
Right. Well, when you look in the film at Scotty or Josh, I mean, when I met Josh, I hugged him. I said, Josh, I used to be like you. I was so thin. I mean, even seeing the film again today, I've seen it many times. I cry every time. To be in that room with the emotions. I mean, there was so many. I sit here going, how am I still crying after all this time? But I do.
Oh, Geraldine, I'm going to throw in there, and for everybody, the obvious one is gluten. We can't have gluten. And then in the film, when Josh ordered the pasta, it's you're sort of going verite, so it's like you don't go in and say you don't want to order that. But I know that Josh has now, my understanding is that Josh now is also addressing his diet. And
he did. He actually called me in 2022 because I was taking care of my mother at the time in Florida. And he called, he said, okay, it's time I start addressing my gut. And he did. And people don't know, but he's gone on to get married. He has a little boy now, and it's, I think he has 2 companies now. I don't know if he started a third. He's done amazing. And that's from wondering if you're going to live. I think a lot of us like, am I going to live through this?
Well, so I think we better get you in on this one.
Yeah. So, I think good nutrition is very important, but I see a lot of patients, as Geraldine was saying, who actually are not even able to eat, and they're very malnourished when they come to me. So I think giving supplemental nutrients has been very important in my practice. And I may or may not address the gut issue. Not everyone has that. But what's important, I think a lot of individuals who are tapering off have neuroinflammation, like inflammation of the brain, just from being on benzos. This is not true of everyone. So what
Right.
I'm saying is not 100%, right? Some people have inflammation, some people have gut issues. So I definitely have a certain percentage that have gut issues, but it's not 100%. And I have many patients who have neuroinflammation, inflammation of the brain, and the vast majority have some sort of nutrient imbalance. So as we're tapering, so I always taper slowly and try to address the symptoms that they're having as they're tapering. So I think we're able to address many of the symptoms, and so that makes tapering not necessarily easy, but manageable and able to get individuals off without the long-term effects of having been on a benzodiazepine. So I think addressing nutrition, and for some people, it might be like Geraldine said, just, focus on the diet, eat well, and then taper, that might be enough. But other people might need more than that, like really supplemental nutrients, right? Like getting more because of their genetics, getting more than they need. And then gut health is important for a vast majority of people, even if they don't have a benzo issue or not. I think gut health is a big issue in the society.
Can I jump in with a question about speed of tapering? Because you talked earlier about some people are recommending 7 days, which is absurd, I think. But we have learned in terms of antidepressants that not only do you have to go very slowly, or most people have to go very slowly. Obviously, individual variation is the key, isn't it, and flexibility. But is it true, excuse my ignorance, but is it true, as it is for antidepressants, that it's particularly important to go slower towards the end, the hyperbolic, the tapering? Is that true for these drugs as well as for antidepressants?
I haven't found that. The patients who come to me, we just have a steady dose throughout. We have a steady decrement. So I have not found that I necessarily decrease the
I don't know what the right answer. You might want to look into
I've
that.
been surveying this for years, and I can say we are all different, and the hyperbolic
Yeah, yeah.
taper works
Yes.
so well for I think especially for people who have been severely harmed. Some people can come off quite quickly. It's individualistic, and Valsa practices that way, so it's kind of a built into her practice that's how her patients are being treated. So that's going to be addressed in that way. But it's you have to. Dr. Bogunovich says this, that she listens to the patient, guided, symptom based.
Yeah.
And for many, the hyperbolic tapering is key, but it's not.
Alison, trying to come in. Sorry, go ahead, Alison.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, I think probably Holly has answered what I was going to say, which is that you kind of have to, and when I first was coming off, I did look at the Ashton manual. It was way too fast for me. So I actually followed my own, a bit of advice that I was kind of given on benzo buddies, but also just kind of my own working out what worked, and kept a very detailed journal. And I think those kind of things, giving yourself some structure when everything else is falling apart or has fallen apart, is really, really helpful. We can be accused of being obsessive about these. So I didn't tell anybody that I was doing this kind of crazily careful tapering. But for me, it was really important because I would just absolutely notice every cut. And you had to be able to ride it without feeling like you couldn't cope with it. So I think it is about letting people take their own time, but still having some courage. You have to have a bit of courage to realize, okay, I might have a few dodgy days, and then it will get better. So I think this recovery messages are so vital to people, and realizing, and making people realize that a lot of it is the drugs, and that they will feel different when they come off. They may have lost themselves, and their families might think they're a completely different person, but they will be different when they come off.
Yeah.
Most
And,
people anyway.
What's the role, do you think, of, yeah, I absolutely agree with what you've all said, is it's different for different people, and flexibility is the key. What do you think the role of psychotherapists and counseling psychologists are in the process of as you're coming off? Of course, you've still got the original, whatever the original problems were that you were put on the drugs for, if there were some. I know some people are put on them for no reason at all. I understand that, but for many people, there were some problems that the drugs were supposed to deal with, and those problems may still be there. So you're not only dealing with the coming off process, but there's the emotional and psychological and social aspects to it. So I'm rambling
Can
on.
I?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I just quickly respond to that from my
Yeah.
own personal experience? And just because I actually had quite a lot of counselling, partly because actually I decided to do a short counselling course as I was coming off, but it gave me an opportunity to kind of revisit it. And I really felt that I was a changed person in positive ways because of it, that I became a stronger individual because of it. And I kind of feel like if I hadn't had that, maybe I'd have had a different experience. So I do think that counselling, psychotherapy, with the people that can kind of understand, maybe, I mean, I think mostly they would, but just having a chance to talk it through for some people can be really helpful.
Yeah, we shouldn't assume that all therapists and psychologists are informed on these.
Well, they're not necessarily
Then,
informed.
but-
Not
but-
necessarily. No, that's probably a bad way of putting it.
but-
No, they're not informed.
Just very quickly, sorry, I'm talking too much, but there has been a tendency, I'm a clinical psychologist, we have kind of avoided these issues for decades and said, oh, it's nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
That's for the doctor to talk about. So I have just put in the chat a guidance, it's a free document that we wrote a couple of years ago for therapists and counselors about how to engage with clients around these sorts of issues and not to be so scared to get involved. Sorry, but I think Valsa, you were trying to come in before?
Yeah, I just wanted to get back to the hyperbolic tapering. I just
sorry,
want to say that I was discounting it. It's just that I let the patients decide what they want to do. So, some people are so anxious to get off it. And if I can support them through whatever taper, sometimes actually some patients have gone. I usually start at a 2.5% decrement the first couple of tapers if they agree. And then many of the patients, in fact, a couple have actually gone from 2.5%, 5%, 10%, 12%.
Wow.
So they choose to, because depending on how they're feeling, they'll just choose the decrement themselves. Then, I have patients who go down every week. They'll choose the dose that they want to go down, and sometimes it's higher, lower. Just sort of saying that it's, I really let the patients, and in fact, individuals don't want me to tell them. That's the other thing is that they want to decide the taper. So it's very flexible. So the only thing I probably insist on is that the first couple of times the taper should be tiny, like a 2.5% decrement. After that, it's up to them because they're the ones that are suffering, in quotes, the withdrawal effect. So I sort of step back and sort of tell them my experience with the many patients I've had. And then just in terms of, we have about 10 mind body kind of therapies or lifestyle changes that they can do. And we ask the individuals to do as many as they can. That includes things like DNRS or, Joe Dispenza. Then we have movement is very, very important. Going out in the sun is also very important. So we let the individuals choose, but movement is key. That is one of the key aspects. But we can't force anyone to do it. Anything actually. So you just sort of recommend like what's worked I always frame it as, this has worked for 80% of the patients or 70% of the patients. And then they decide what they would like to do. Because I think people who come in for benzo tapering, they've been through so much and they are very sort of resistant may not be the right word, but they know what they want. Like they don't want to hear from me that it should be a 2.5% or a 5% taper. They're like, no, I want to decide what I want to do. So it becomes a little, it becomes very, very patient centered.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Just another resource that's out there that people are talking about in the chat is the Maudsley deprescribing guidelines, which have just come out this last year, written by the rather wonderful Mark Horowitz and his colleague, and which is available all around the world. I mean, it's a book, people can buy it. It's not cheap, and that does cover benzos. There's a volume 2 which will cover antipsychotics and others, but that's out there with lots of information in it. We're drawing towards the close now, and I want to make sure there's time for each of you to have your last word. So I'm going to move us towards that. In doing so, can you? There's a few questions about what happened next from the film, like how is the bill doing? What happened with that? And how are the couple of people in the film, how are they doing? If you know, so people are looking for a bit of an update on what's happened since. But I'm going to hand it over to you to say whatever you like, and I'm going to give Geraldine the last word, Holly the second to last word. I'm being a bit controlling now. I hope you don't mind. So I'm going to ask Alison to go first, then Valsa, then Holly, then Geraldine. Just your final thoughts.
So my final thoughts are, firstly, that I think this has been an excellent opportunity to bring people together and to share our kind of our thoughts and our experiences. It's not a problem, somebody put in the chat, there was a query about whether it's a legacy in the UK. It's not a legacy. These drugs are still around. There is no certainty that they're not going to be more prescribed at some point. And so I think there still needs to be more awareness of this, and particularly in relation to polyprescribing as well, which somebody also talked about. So that's my thoughts about that. Maybe, there still needs to be a kind of a group, maybe an internet. I mean, I'm sure you're more, Holly and Geraldine will know more what goes on, but I think there still needs to be pressure and international collaboration on this.
Thanks, Alison. Thank you very much. Valsa, you're on mute again.
I just want to thank Holly and everyone for bringing greater awareness of the benzodiazepine created problems, to the wider world. So, and also to Geraldine for her lifelong work or decades-long work around this. So thank you, both of you, for putting in so much effort to help people and also to create awareness.
Thank you for the work you're doing also, needs to be said. Holly.
Well, yes, I think people are interested in knowing what happened to people in the film, and I think it's not surprising to learn that Scotty, last I heard, is just not doing well, sort of hospitalized basically in care. Amy's doing well. She was traumatized so badly. This is another topic, like how this benzodiazepine injury affects people around them. And yeah, there's so much work to do. But work has been happening. Okay, let's talk about, as you can see, Geraldine. She's going to tell you more. She does not have an easy life, but what's nice is, and Geraldine, you will expand on this, you're living such a full life right now, even if it does include a lot of challenges and difficulties. Matt continues to do quite well. He's climbing again. He posts videos sometimes of his wall climbing, especially, and it's extraordinary. and he's older now, and it's, so to see that degree of healing that can actually happen. And I know Paula has continued to come along. Sonia has moved to Idaho and is a licensed psychotherapist, or it might not be a licensed social worker, I believe, and with clients. And it's just, so the healing can happen. And I'm just want to quickly say, what I've seen with so many of the people who are more successful with the true healing process is that they do change their lifestyles. We've already talked about diet. Diet tends to have, I almost want to say, everything to do with it. Learning how to cope with anxieties, difficulties through safer practices, meditation. Somebody mentioned energy healing. There are modalities that are just safe. For me, meditation has been huge. And getting out into nature and surrounding yourself with as much positivity as possible. And we live in very challenging times, tough times, and just trying to maintain some sort of bubble of safety. And I just want to say one more time, please, please understand, not the benzodiazepine prescribing, the benzodiazepine injury, along with other psychotropic medications, is a huge, huge issue in our lifetime. And it is, I just want to emphasize again, in the UK, I was sort of pushed back. Oh, it's not really a problem in the UK. I just told you the millions of dollars that are, the rising rates of sales in the UK, and of course around the world. It's $1 billion industry still. It is difficult to have enough pushback so that when you get to the level of a hospital policy or a medical society policy, that they're really making the change that we know needs to happen. We can be very grateful to all the people who submitted testimony to the FDA. And so that this boxed warning that I think is not just having an effect in the United States, but is being felt in certain ways around the world, because it's the box warning is respected. Really, so there's a lot of information acknowledging the difficulties of long-term prescribing.
Thank you, Holly. And that leaves just you, Geraldine, to wrap us up.
All right, well, so I'm going to quickly update. As she mentioned that my friend Paula is doing very well. So Paula is fully off of her Klonopin. She looks amazing. She looks like a different person. She was also put on an antidepressant. I believe she's more than halfway off of that. She is going away for summers with her sisters. She's living life again. I want to just say this about diet, because I'm a big proponent of eating well. Not that I'm always perfect, but I'm doing Whole30 right now. But Paula was a terrible eater her whole life, and she just didn't have the capability to eat healthy all the time. So there are people that say, if I don't eat healthy, am I going to get better? Yes, because we have some that don't. But I don't ever want to get sick again. So I would say 90% of the time I eat very healthy. So I just want to throw that in there. And do I have a busy life? I probably work harder now than when I work full time, so it's like I'm the one that's home. My brother's going through a horrible divorce, so I'm not only taking care of my household, his kids. He only had one child when the film was done. Now he has two that I have to do. I have my granddaughter, I'm her daycare, probably for my grandson also. It's a very full life. I took care of each of the elderly. My aunt when she was sick, my uncle when he was sick. Those that took care of me, I was able to turn around and help them as they were all getting older and sick. And even my husband, my family was good to me when I was sick. And then when my husband was sick, I'm there for him. I mean, it was daily for months and months and months with him. So life goes on, and you just do what will work for you at the time, and use as prescribed as one of the best tools you can do to let people know what you're going through is real, and show your doctors, spread the word. I mean, we are getting the point across that this is real, and this film shows really the suffering that people are going through. So, I just want to encourage people to keep going. It took me a long time to heal. So I'm not one of the ones that healed quickly. So I can say I held out. I kept looking for the answer, found it, and got better.
Thank you, Geraldine. Holly's bursting to have one last word. You're on mute though, Holly. It's got to be
I
brief.
feel terrible. I didn't mention Sam. I'm still in somewhat regular touch with his dad. Now it's more through social media. We used to speak on the phone more often, and I've gotten a couple messages from his sister Talisa, who's in the film. Sam, as you might not be surprised, just wasn't getting the holistic help that he needed in order to truly recover from this. And I engaged with a social worker and tried to engage with a psychiatrist who was working with him. And I had permission. I had as a patient advocate, and the walls that went up just. I worried at the time, is he ever going to be able to make it? So we have systems working against us. And so I want to speak, we need to help each other. We need to continue to use our voices, continue banging on those doors. We've got to change the systems.
Thanks, Holly. So it falls to me just thank all of you, the entire panel, and to all of you who've joined us from all over the world today. On behalf of the International Institute for Psychiatric Drug Withdrawal, it's been a privilege to have you all with us. This battle is not going to go away. My cliche that I end most of these meetings with is these sort of battles are the hardest battles there are, but you sure meet the best people. And I'd like to include all of you in that. I've met all of you for the first time today, and I'm just in love with all of you already. And all the work that you're doing in your different ways. And again, thank you to all of the people out there. Sorry if I didn't get to all of your questions. If you want to support the work of the Institute, get on our website and see if you can spare us a little bit of money to keep us going. Sorry, I have to say that. But I said I'd wrap us up on time, so I'm going to do that. But thanks to everybody for all that you're doing. And
Thank you, John.
we will
Thank
get there
you.
because
This has
there's
been a real honor. Thank you.
millions of us working in the same direction around the world in different ways. And we will get there slowly but surely. Good night, everyone, or good afternoon, or good morning, and thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
And thank you
Thank
to
you
Lucy.
so much.
Thank you to Lucy, who organized all of this.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
thank you, Lucy.
Thanks to everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.